It is time for my 27-week update. Kind of going along with last week's update, I definitely feel like I've hit that third trimester discomfort and all of that. It's difficult to sleep and my back hurts and I always need to pee. And I think I mentioned it just a little bit in my last video. It's hard to get comfortable in many positions, especially when I try to sleep. It's really hard to sleep. And I always have pressure on my bladder, and just overall, it's harder to be comfortable. I've got a big belly in the way now, and a big baby in that belly, and he can make it kind of tough, especially since he likes to stretch out and get all up in my ribs or push really hard out against my sides, and because of how big I'm dealing with a lot of round ligament pain and a lot of Braxton Hicks now. They definitely get worse when I go on my walks, which is unfortunate because I do try to go on a walk every single day just to keep myself healthy and active, and it's kind of tough when I'm going on my walk and I'm sitting there like having contractions throughout. Luckily they're just Braxton Hicks, and so they aren't actually doing anything to my cervix. I do have a story about that I want to share about something that happened this week, but I'll get to that later. This week, baby is about the size of lettuce, and something I read on one of my apps said that pretty much double the weight that they were 4 weeks ago. So I'm 27 weeks, 4 weeks ago was 23 weeks. I don't know exactly how much he was at 23 weeks, but at 21 weeks, he was already over a pound. So he's definitely over 2 pounds then, if that's correct, and probably well on his way to 3 pounds by now. And I'm only 27 weeks. I have at least 10 more weeks to go until the baby comes. My app's also saying he's right around 14.5 inches, somewhere in there. So he's getting big. He's definitely getting big, and he's taken up a lot more room, and he's running out of room a lot. The poor boy. He's always trying to make room for himself. Also, I have dealt with back pain and stuff for years now. I've been going to chiropractors for years. It's just my body is often out of alignment and for some reason doesn't like to hold the adjustments, and so it's not uncommon for me to be in pain. Unfortunately, with pregnancy, it adds stress and strain to your body, and so I've definitely been noticing that I've had a lot of pelvis pain. And again, that's very normal because my pelvis is off kilter. I do have one leg that's a little bit longer than the other when it's out of place. And I had a chiropractor tell me I might have mild, like very, very mild scoliosis. So with just the stress and the strain of pregnancy, as well as the relaxin that's going through my body, I have been in quite a bit of pelvic pain. So I mentioned that I've had a lot more pressure on my bladder and I've been peeing a lot more. And just the other day I was actually joking with Michael that I'm gonna have to start carrying a change of clothes with me everywhere, just because I feel like I've reached the point in my pregnancy where peeing myself is a very real possibility. And I can only imagine as I get bigger and as the pressure increases, it's going to get worse. I haven't felt any sort of bladder incontinence at all yet, but I can see why pregnant women sometimes do, just because the pressure is so intense and you kind of always feel like you have to pee. I will absolutely be carrying a spare change of clothes everywhere I go. A couple weeks ago I was really struggling and getting only like 2 or 3 hours of sleep a night. I'm doing better than that, but I just generally feel exhausted all the time, and I don't really have much energy, mental or physical, to do much of anything. And I'm sure that's gonna last to the end of this pregnancy and even longer once I have a newborn and we're not sleeping as much. Just an update in general in the pregnancy. Next week I will be in my 3rd trimester, which is really exciting. I will be 2/3 of the way done with this pregnancy. Also, this week I have 10 weeks until I'm considered full term, and that means 10 weeks until we're on baby watch. which I say this every week and it probably gets really annoying, but that is crazy. I cannot believe that in 2.5 months he could be here. That kind of segues into the emotional side of things. And honestly, I've just been really excited and just grateful, truly grateful for getting to experience this and for how easy my pregnancy has been. Because even with these discomforts I'm experiencing, and even with the horrible morning sickness that I experienced at the beginning, I've had it really easy. There's so many women who struggle so much more than that. And I'm just so grateful that my body's handled it so well and that I have handled it so well emotionally. I don't think I've really talked about this before, but I do suffer from some mental health stuff, and it runs very heavily in my family. And so I wasn't totally sure how pregnancy would affect all of that. I didn't know if it would really exacerbate everything I was experiencing, or if it would maybe even some hormones out, which sounds totally like an oxymoron, pregnancy evening out hormones, right? But it actually seems like it truly has. I've really been a lot more even-keeled since getting pregnant. I can get into that in another video if anyone's interested. The point I'm trying to make is things have been really good emotionally. So now time for the not so fun thing that happened this week. Today's Wednesday, that's when my weeks turn over, and this previous Friday I started having Braxton Hicks and like menstrual light cramping, and that cramping was also radiating down my hips. And so I thought maybe because I'm having this hip pain, it's actually coming from my hips and it's causing me to have Braxton Hicks and cramping elsewhere. And so I decided to go on a walk to try to see if that would help loosen up my hips, which would relieve the pain. And I knew that I was going to keep it very short and very slow. And so I went ahead and headed out on my walk, and within minutes of being out there, probably just 1 minute of starting my walk, I started having back-to-back Braxton Hicks. And that was even with keeping it very slow. And so I decided to go home, and I sat down and I started doing the next thing that I know that midwives and doctors typically ask you to do. And so I sat down and I rested and I just drank water. And after about 5 hours of resting and drinking water to rehydrate myself, the Braxton Hicks and cramping was not going away. It wasn't getting any worse, but it wasn't getting any better either. And so I went ahead and made a call to my midwife, and I forgot to mention, let me backtrack a second. I use fertility awareness method for birth control, and so I'm very familiar with checking my cervix. And so when the cramping started, I went ahead and checked, and it was normal. And then at this point, right before I called my midwife, I checked again, and there was a very small but a noticeable change in my cervix. And so when I called, that was a little concerning to her. So she wanted me to try this one thing, and if it didn't work within the hour, she was going to send me to the hospital. And so she thought it might be an electrolyte imbalance. And so she had me get some magnesium and calcium and Pedialyte and Epsom salts. And she had me take a bath and rest and take a bunch of magnesium and calcium and drink a bunch of electrolytes. And luckily within probably 30 minutes, it had completely stopped. Thank goodness. And so we know that it was an electrolyte imbalance, and so now going forward, I have to continue taking magnesium and calcium, and half of my fluid intake every single day has to be electrolytes. And so the way I'm doing that is with coconut water. I'm very grateful I have these knowledgeable, wonderful women as my midwives. They truly are amazing. They've never ever made Michael or I feel like we're being annoying with our questions or like we're dumb, because it's our first time going through this. Every single time I've had questions, they will sit there. Even if I go in with a list of questions, they'll sit there as long as I need them to and answer questions. And they're clearly knowledgeable and they know what they're talking about, but they also are very aware of when the care leaves their scope of practice and when they need to refer someone out elsewhere. And I'm just very grateful to have that and to have them as my birth team. It's truly wonderful, and I'm very, very grateful. So I think that is probably about the end of my update. If I have any more space on my SD card, I will go ahead and do a quick belly shot just to update everyone, because it's been almost 10 weeks since I did the last one. So I'll see y'all next week. If you're interested in seeing my next updates, go ahead and subscribe, and it'll notify you when I post again. Let me know how you're doing in your pregnancies, how far along you are, or if you're not pregnant, let me know what's going on in your lives and how you're doing. I'd love to hear, and I hope everything's going well with y'all too. Alright, here's my 27-week belly. I don't know if y'all can see that very well.